Hello. As you will recall from the previous video, I was so verbose, yeah, what else is new, that we only got as far as step one, talking about our non-trivial recursive example. This is video 10, and it picks up where the last one left off. How about step two, for crying out loud? Got to take at least 2 steps, or we're never going to get anywhere. This is thinking recursively. Well, this is still part of thinking recursively, but this is the step where we actually do have to consider recursion. Thinking recursively. And mental note to myself and to all of our studio audience here, also, in addition to thinking recursively, think locally. Pay attention to what's right in front of you, that one thing. You have one job. You're going to take care of one square. No matter how massive the region is, with all kinds of plots and deposits and all that stuff in it, your job, Mr. Recursive Function, Mr. Recursive Case, is one square. Okay, I've said that too many times already. I'll write it down. Take the point of view of one grid square. I'm not going to call it a plot or pocket because I don't know which one it is yet. Take the point of view of one grid square. And yes, this is going to be represented as a we might as well start leaking in bits of implementation details. This is going to be a 2-dimensional array of integers or unsigns, 0, 1. There will not be a negative. But if we take the point of view of one grid square, here's a fig. Which grid square? The top left corner, the something along the board? I don't know. Just in general, tic-tac-toe shape. And the grid square in the middle. Oh, look at you. Aren't you special and important? I'll even put a star there. Yellow doesn't show up, so I'm using orange. The grid square of the hour. There might be other grid squares above, to the left, to the right, all that other stuff. We don't care. We only care about us. Just us. Nobody else matters. An observation about me, since it's all about me, I'll even do it from first person. This is the orange square talking. OBSV. If I'm a 0, well, I guess first of all, that means my parents were wrong. I'm not that special after all. If I'm a 0, then I'm no part of a deposit. So I return immediately. It's a waste of time. Don't even bother with me. Don't look, I'm hideous. If I'm a 0, then I'm no part of a deposit. Return immediately. That has the flavor of something we've seen before, doesn't it? I'll suggest that that's our base case. Listen to me, making that sound singular. That's the base case. How presumptuous of me. Well, I finessed away all the other base cases. If I had not put the colorful candy shell of bouncy wall zeros around this thing, then this would be much more complicated. Oh no, is my coordinate too small and I'm off the top? Is my row coordinate too large? I'm off the bottom, all this other stuff. I don't have to check for that. All I got to do is see whether or not I got oil. If this star is covering up a 0, then we return immediately. There's no oil there. Nothing to do. Nothing to see here. Move on. If I'm still here, I'll put that in parentheses too. If I'm still here, then for one thing, it's good old-fashioned implicit else. You don't have to put an else. That's an if. If I'm a 0, I'm gone. If I'm still here, then everything else in the function is the else part. And you don't in general, by convention, put an else in curly brackets. It complicates the code unnecessarily. If I'm still here, then I fell through. It's not a base case. And let's talk about me again. I, as an oil pocket, I hope I'm using that term correctly. I hope I can spell it correctly. I as an oil pocket, P-O-C-K-E-T. That means not only do I exist in the grid, I have oil. I am a 1. I know I'm a 1 because the only other possibility was I was a 0. I, as an oil pocket, can, I'll put this in quotes, this is not technical terms at all, can dry myself up. I will surrender my oil to whoever is exploring for oil or maybe even pumping for oil. What does that mean? Well, in this context, it means ... I can set myself to 0 because I've now been accounted for. Or just counted. I've now been counted. Well, we're not counting these. I'm sorry. I've got another have a different word. I can set myself to 0 because I've now been used. There. I've been used up. And, wait, there's more. And let's see. I as an oil pocket, comma, can dry myself up and tell each of my neighbors to do the same. The neighbors. Remember, you are adjacent in this oil field problem, the way it's stated. I mean, we got to look back at the original problem. You are next to or adjacent to another square, which I'm calling neighbors down here. Maybe I should put them in quotes. You are adjacent to a neighbor if you're next to them horizontally, if you're above or beneath them vertically, or the trickier case, perhaps the catty-cornered case. So actually, every one of these fragments of squares that you see around here, each one of those is a neighbor. So I've got to talk to all my neighbors. Tell each one of my neighbors to do the same. Dry yourself up. Without loss of generalization, but with a different color, so this doesn't get ridiculously complicated already. I'm going to say, again, you can start counting anywhere you want. I'm going to say that this is neighbor number 1. That blue is too close to black. Let me get a different blue. The shade of blue is very important. This is neighbor, no, it's not. I'm sorry, I shouldn't even be flippant about that. That's neighbor number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'm violating social distancing all over the place. I'm visiting every single one of my neighbors, anyone that's living around me. I'll start here, and then I'll go to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and be done. I'll have visited all my neighbors. So what is it that I'm doing exactly here again? Let me go back to where I came from. Let's say, you know what? Square number 2 had pretty supportive parents as well. So they get an orange star. They think they're something special. The first square, number 1 here, bless your heart, you used to be an asterisk, but now you're just a big fat 0. You don't have any oil. So now, let me go through these steps again. This is step 2, thinking recursively. Think locally. We're only paying attention to this square. I'm sorry I even mentioned the other squares yet. Take the point of view of one grid square, this one right here. The square of the hour, the person of the hour. Observation, if I'm a 0, if I look at myself and find out I'm a 0, I'll return immediately. Failure, no oil here. Okay, if I'm still here, I, as an oil pocket, can dry myself up. I'm going to set myself from a 1 to a 0 for reasons that will become apparent, I hope, in just a minute. I'm going to dry myself up, and I can set myself to a 0 because now I've been seen. I've been counted. I keep using that word. We're not counting the oil pockets. We're counting only the deposits, the connected regions. So I'm sorry for using that. I can set myself to 0 because I've now been used. I've been used up, and tell each of my neighbors to do the same. Without loss of generalization, I'm going to say we go up to this square first. So this one says, you know what? I've been used. I have oil. I'm part of a deposit. Are you with me? Comes up this direction. square 1, neighbor number 1, just returns immediately. Well, how do I know it returns immediately? Because when we go up here to square 1, we start all over again. We're sneaking up on the recursive algorithm here. When we go to square 1, that's a recursive call. If square 1 is a 0, oh, you aren't part of any deposit, return immediately. So it comes right back here to the square where it started. That's what's going to allow this to go out each direction, one at a time, in a star notation even. So it goes up here, no oil, comes back immediately. Let's go to square 2 then, see if they have any oil. Observation, square 2 says, now we're taking the point of view of square 2 up here, neighbor number 2. If I'm a 0, I have no oil, return immediately. Well, it's not a 0. It's not a 0. So we're still here. I'm still here. I'm still up here at neighbor number 2's house. As an oil pocket, I know there's oil here, or I would have returned already. I can dry myself up. Square number 2, neighbor 2 will dry itself up. And then it will start going around in a circle visiting all of its neighbors, saying, if you have oil, you're with me, you're part of me deposit. We're all one big happy deposit together, violating social distancing every which way but loose. But look what's happening here. This is going to creep around and find all of the orange stars that are in any way connected to this one. Neighbors of neighbors of neighbors and everything. Let's say these are the only 2 right now. So we come up this direction, neighbor number 1 was a bust, but neighbor number 2 has oil, and dry myself up. So let's say neighbor number 2 decides, well, it's going to see if it has any neighbors that are part of the same deposit. So it goes up to the left to its neighbor number 1, nothing there. Let's say that these are the only 2 stars in the entire region, just for the sake of example. 0 back, 0 back, 0 back, 0 back, 0 back, 0 back. But look what happens. It is going to visit this initial square as one of the neighbors of square number 2. What if I had not dried myself up immediately? Think about that for a second. If I leave myself as a 1 and then start going around visiting the neighbors, saying, find the ones that are connected to you. Each of you neighbors out there, find the ones that are connected to you that contain oil. And square number 2 is a bust. Nobody contains oil except these 2. So bust, 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 nothing here. But it does get around. We are actually neighbor number 6 from the point of view of square number 2. Do you see that that's the case? If I start all over again right here, then it goes around. This is neighbor number 6. When I visit neighbor number 6, if that's a 1, then it's going to make the recursive call start all over again. Let me say that again. If we start here, visiting all the neighbors, we get to square number 2. It has oil. It's going to start all over again. It's going to think it's the center of the oil universe and start visiting each one of its neighbors going around in a circle. If it comes back around to this one where we started and there's still oil there, then it's going to start all over again. It's going to start there by telling, okay, neighbor number 6, tell all of your squares. And even though these are the only 2 stars in the entire thing, if you've kept up with the thought process through all this, it's going to go back and forth in an infinite recursive loop. Technically, it's not the recursive function calling itself over and over again. It's mutually recursive functions calling each other back and forth. What we in the biz would call oscillation. It would oscillate back and forth between the original square and square number 2, calling each other in an infinite loop. You dry up all your neighbors. Okay, you dry up all your neighbors. Okay, now you dry up all your neighbors. And it goes back and forth like that forever. That's why I made a big deal out of it now, but it's an important point, and I might not have explained it very well. But that's why I want to immediately set myself to 0 as soon as I've been discovered with oil, so that I don't get caught again. If I immediately set myself to 0, and then when square 2 is looking for all of its neighbors, then when it gets back to me, it's going to say, you know what, there's no oil there. We know there was oil there, but we don't want to start all over again there at the same place where we've already started because of infinite recursive loop. Heavy duty stuff. All of this is still, this was step 2, thinking recursively. How can I take a local point of view? This is the general idea of the algorithm. Armed with this, write this down, put this in your notes, because this, we're going to have to slap this on a bigger region and just see what it does in practice with an entire region, a much bigger grid. And that's what we'll do in the next one. See you online.